My next guest needs no introduction. He's really one of the most famous people, maybe the most famous person in the world right now. He is the nation's leading infectious diseases expert. He's now chief medical advisor in the Biden administration. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy, Infectious Diseases, and a friend. And I just want to say, Dr. Fauci, you know, I don't know if you're using a lot of facial moisturizer. This may be rude to say, but you look 30 years younger. you look like you're having fun again. Look, I don't want to litigate anything in the past. I want to talk about the future. This is about science. This is about what we got to get right in the future. And I guess my question is, I don't want to relitigate where we're at right now. We can talk about vaccine and vaccine distribution. What I really want to know is science delivering for us in a way that not only in dealing with COVID-19, you and I have talked about the next wave, zoonotic diseases. Are we setting up an infrastructure of science, partnerships with private sector, where we're not going to be caught so flat-footed again?
Well, you're absolutely correct, Steve. And in fact, I think Michael just now essentially underscored that. If you look at people talk about how quickly we went from the sequence of the virus in January, early January, January 10th, to the fact that 11 months later, we had vaccine in the arms of people of a vaccine, both Pfizer and Moderna, that were 94 to 95% efficacious and with a very good safety profile. The fact is, the research that went into the development of this extraordinary capability of vaccine platform technologies that are easily adaptable, not only to what we did with COVID, but it's going to make it that much more easy for us to adapt to the mutants, the new lineages that we're seeing in South Africa, in the UK, in Brazil, the UK one being already in 25 or more states in the United States. So it is likely that as we move forward, even though our vaccines look like they still are effective against the new lineages, as the virus evolves, we may need to quickly develop a booster that's reflecting the mutant that is circulating so that we can induce antibodies to protect. So in answer to your question, Steve, the science has been extraordinary, and it's going to lead us to be able to do things that you and I never would have imagined a decade ago.
Tony, have we contracted, as the U.S. government contracted with companies like Pfizer and Moderna, and I understand Johnson & Johnson is coming on, have we contracted at the scale we need, which is greater? I mean, I listened to President Biden very carefully. He says we're going to give a 16% bump up. I mean, I've talked to some mayors and governors, and they said that's not enough. Are we contracting what we need in a way and getting this scale, not only for now, but down the road? Because, you know, I suspect we're going to have to be in this business for a while.
Well, the answer is for COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2, Steve, definitely, because we had an initial contractual relationship with both Pfizer and Moderna, which the president has now ticked up a bit so that there'll be an extra 100 million doses from Moderna and additional 100 million doses from Pfizer. We originally contracted for 200 million apiece from each of those, which gave us 400 million. Now we have, just from those two companies, a contractual arrangement that will go well into the summer, but it still will be for a total of 600 million doses. That is independent of the contractual arrangements that we've made with companies such as Janssen or J&J, which is right now literally on the cusp of determining what the safety and efficacy of their product is, the human adeno. So the answer to your question is yes. And we will use this as a model for the future, particularly in our ability to move quickly to develop and also produce vaccines.
When you look at the number of vaccines that we're going to need right now and what we need coming up, the president of Moderna has said we're going to be living with COVID for a long time. Many other, we're going to have to sort of think differently. You know, I spent some of my youth looking at how Toyota operates, just-in-time production. We now are going to have just-in-time vaccines, no more stored vaccines, delivering them. Is the U.S. government prepared to work at that level of efficiency?
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now. In fact, the model of how we are going to be responding a step ahead of the game, Steve. We, right at this minute, have a vaccine that's effective against wild type and effective even with the changes in the new lineages that we're seeing in other countries, it's still effective. Not so necessarily with the monoclonal antibodies. They seem to have a more serious impact on the monoclonal antibodies. But even though it is, we are preparing in anticipation that the virus will continue to evolve and may get to the point where it crosses the threshold that our vaccine is no longer effective as we want it to be. So we're already a couple of steps ahead of the game in case that happens. We don't want it to happen. We hope it doesn't happen. But if it does, we're already doing what it takes to be able to address that.
Tony, I've known you now for a long time and talked to you, and you've never been shy about offering your honest counsel at any moment. With the team of people coming in, they're doing a lot in a very short period of time, new leadership, inflection point. But I know you're always saying, hey, we need to do more, What are we not doing enough of right now that you feel like also has to be part of the picture? Where do we need to lean in that the administration has not gotten to yet?
Well, I think, that's a great question, Steve. But if you read I think it's a 101-page strategic plan that we have for COVID-19 and pandemic preparedness, everything right now that I can think of, Steve, is in there. Are we doing it all at this moment? No. The administration has only been in effect for literally a few days. But the plan is to get to each and every one of the things that I otherwise would have told you. Maybe we should be doing more of that. I mean, for example, getting the vaccine into the arms of people in a way that's equitable. By equitable, I mean not just people who can get on a computer or not just people who can walk into a drugstore that's around the corner from them. I'm talking about putting up community vaccine centers, particularly in areas where demographically there are people there who don't usually have easy access to health care and the kinds of things that would get them vaccinated. Getting mobile units to go out into the community, particularly not easy to access areas. So those are the things that I said should be done, but they actually are in the plan that the president announced a few days ago.
Tony, I know your time is very short, and I want to ask a really serious question. I had a conversation earlier today with Senator Ben Cardin, and I asked him, I said, what is your gut, about small business? He's going to be chairman of the Small Business Committee. I said, what are people feeling? What are you feeling? Do you feel like we're through the worst impacts in your constituents, your state, the folks that you're working with, or do you feel like there's more? And he said, look, I think it depends on where people are at. Some are going to have a very, very dark time ahead. Some are there. But I would ask you, when the president's talking about 500,000 deaths, that grim milestone this next month. And of course, beyond that, there are going to be more. Do you feel with everything that we're doing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel? Or is that the wrong way to think about this?
Steve, I do believe that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But as usual, you know me well, I don't want the realization that there's a light there to have us pull back on the intensity of our effort. As Mikhail said, we're not going to just end this dramatically in a couple of months. We're going to do much better over the next several months as we get more and more people vaccinated. But we have to be prepared that this will be an elusive virus, that we would have to make some modifications in our interventions, whatever they may be, an upgraded vaccine, different types of monoclonal antibodies. So yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We will begin to approach some degree of normality as we get into the late fall of this year, as we get into the winter. But we've got to keep our eye on it and our pressure on it. Otherwise, it could slip away from us. So if normal means not paying attention to anything, we're never going to go to that normal. To me, that would be abnormal, because from now on, we've got to constantly be vigilant. That, to me, is the new normal, constant vigilance.
Well, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Chief Medical Advisor to President Biden, Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. I always enjoy talking to you. I sort of feel like science has been on trial for a few years. Maybe science is back. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.